My son and his wife announce she's pregnant for the fifth time, but I'm tired of raising her kids, so I'm finally putting my foot down. My name is Dorothy Washington, and at 57 years old, I thought I'd earned the right to enjoy my golden years in peace. I've worked hard my entire life, 32 years as a high school English teacher, raising my own 3 children as a single mother after my husband passed when I was 35. I've built a comfortable life for myself in my brick colonial in suburban Atlanta, with my pension, savings, and the small inheritance from my mother's house sale. I thought I'd done my duty, raised my children well, and could finally focus on myself. But life, as I've learned repeatedly, has other plans. It started 4 years ago when my youngest son, Marcus, 28 at the time, married Shayla. She was 24, beautiful, and pregnant with their first child. I was thrilled to become a grandmother and welcomed her into our family with open arms. Marcus had always been my baby, the one who struggled the most after his father's death, and seeing him happy and starting a family filled my heart with joy. Little did I know that joy would slowly transform into exhaustion, resentment, and a feeling of being taken advantage of that I'm still grappling with today. The pattern started innocently enough. After baby Malik was born, Shayla struggled with what she called postpartum depression. Marcus was working 2 jobs, one at the warehouse and another doing landscaping on weekends, to make ends meet. They lived in a small apartment across town, and when Shayla called crying, saying she couldn't handle the baby and needed help, what was I supposed to do? Turn my back on my grandchild? I started going over 3 times a week, then every other day, then practically every day. I'd find Shayla in bed at 2 in the afternoon, the baby crying in his crib, dirty diapers everywhere, and nothing prepared for dinner. At first, I told myself she was just adjusting. New motherhood is hard and she was young. But then came pregnancy number 2. Malik was barely 8 months old when Shayla announced she was expecting again. This time, I felt a flutter of concern rather than pure excitement. Marcus looked overwhelmed when he shared the news, his eyes darting to the stack of unpaid bills on their kitchen counter. But I pushed down my worries and prepared to welcome another grandchild. Zara was born when Malik was 17 months old. 2 babies in diapers. 2 babies needing constant attention. Shayla's postpartum depression returned, this time with a vengeance. She started calling me at 6 in the morning, sobbing, saying she couldn't get out of bed. Marcus would leave for work at 5:30, and by 7 I'd be at their apartment, managing 2 crying babies while Shayla slept until noon. I suggested therapy, offered to help her find resources, even offered to pay for a babysitter a few hours a week so she could have time to herself. But Shayla always had an excuse. Therapy was too expensive even though I offered to pay. Babysitters were strangers who couldn't be trusted. The only person she felt comfortable leaving the children with was me, and I enabled it. I can see that now, but at the time, I told myself I was being a good mother-in-law, a supportive grandmother. I was putting my family first, the way my own mother had taught me. Then came pregnancy number 3. Zara wasn't even walking yet when Shayla announced baby number 3. This time, I couldn't hide my shock. I sat Marcus down privately and asked him if this was planned, if they'd discussed family planning, if they understood the financial implications of 3 children under 3 years old. "Ma, it just happened," he said, looking sheepish. "We're not exactly careful about, and Shayla says birth control makes her feel sick." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake some sense into both of them. Instead, I took a deep breath and asked what they planned to do about childcare, about money, about the basic logistics of managing 3 babies. "We'll figure it out," Marcus said. "We always do, and we know we can count on you." That phrase, "we can count on you," has haunted me for years now. Baby Amara was born, and the pattern intensified. 3 children under 3. Shayla's postpartum issues worse than ever, and me essentially functioning as their live-in nanny without the live-in part. I was driving to their apartment every morning at 7, staying until Marcus got home at 6 or 7 in the evening. I was doing laundry, cooking meals, changing diapers, entertaining toddlers, and cleaning their house, while Shayla remained in bed, claiming she was too overwhelmed to function. My own life disappeared. I stopped meeting my friends for our monthly book club. I canceled my subscription to the theater series I'd enjoyed for 15 years. I stopped taking my morning walks, stopped tending to my garden, stopped reading for pleasure. Every conversation with friends became about my grandchildren, their needs, their latest developmental milestones, their demands on my time. My friend Coretta pulled me aside after I missed our 4th consecutive book club meeting. "Dorothy, honey, you're disappearing," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "When's the last time we talked about something that wasn't about those babies? When's the last time you did something just for you?" I couldn't answer her because I couldn't remember, but I told myself it was temporary. The kids would get older, become more independent. Shayla would find her footing as a mother. Marcus would get a better job. Things would settle down. Then came pregnancy number 4. Amara was 18 months old. Malik was barely 3. Zara was 2 and still not fully potty trained. The family was crammed into their tiny 2-bedroom apartment. Marcus was working himself to exhaustion, and I was spending more time at their place than my own. When Shayla called to share the news about pregnancy number 4, I felt something inside me break, not crack, break completely. "Congratulations," I managed to say, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "I know what you're thinking," Shayla said, her voice defensive, "but this one was definitely not planned. I've been trying to get on birth control, but you know how it is with my hormones and everything. I wanted to point out that condoms existed, that there were multiple forms of birth control, that maybe, just maybe, they should consider their circumstances before engaging in unprotected sex. But I bit my tongue because that's what good mothers-in-law do, right? Keep the peace, support the family." Baby Jalen was born, and I found myself caring for 4 children under 4 years old while their mother slept, watched television, or complained about how tired she was. Marcus was working overtime constantly, picking up extra shifts wherever he could find them. The family qualified for government assistance, which helped with some expenses, but the physical and emotional labor of caring for these children fell squarely on my shoulders. I started developing health problems. My blood pressure spiked. I began having trouble sleeping, my mind racing at night with mental lists of everything I needed to do for the children the next day. I gained weight from stress eating and lack of time for proper meals or exercise. My doctor warned me about burnout and suggested I consider reducing my stress levels. "How?" I asked her. "These are my grandchildren. What am I supposed to do? Abandon them?" "You're supposed to take care of yourself too," she said. "You can't pour from an empty cup." But every time I tried to pull back, there would be a crisis. Malik would have a fever and need to go to the doctor. Zara would have a meltdown at daycare and need to be picked up early. Amara would stop napping and Shayla would call me crying, saying she couldn't handle all 4 of them awake at the same time, and I'd be back in my car, driving across town to rescue everyone. My own children started expressing concern. My daughter Kenya, who lives in Houston with her own family, called me after Marcus mentioned how much I was helping out. "Mama, you're doing too much," she said during one of our Sunday phone calls. "Those are their children, not yours. You raised your kids. You shouldn't have to raise your grandchildren, too." "But what choice do I have?" I asked. "Let those babies suffer because their parents can't get their act together?" "You have lots of choices," Kenya said firmly. "You're just afraid to make the hard ones." She was right, but I wasn't ready to hear it yet. My other son, Damon, who lives locally but travels frequently for work, was more blunt when he stopped by my house one evening and found me exhausted, surrounded by baby gear I'd bought for the grandchildren, my dining room table covered with formula and diapers. "Ma, this is crazy," he said. "This isn't normal. Grandparents don't raise their grandchildren unless there's an emergency situation." "What's the emergency here?" "Shayla has postpartum depression," I said automatically. "For 4 years? Through 4 different pregnancies? That's not postpartum depression, Ma. That's something else. And even if it's It's not your job to fix it by sacrificing your entire life. I got defensive, told him he didn't understand that family helps family, but his words stuck with me. The breaking point came 6 months ago. I'd been watching all 4 children for 12 hours straight because Marcus had to work a double shift and Shayla had what she called one of her bad days. The kids were cranky, hungry, and destroying my living room. I'd moved most of their care to my house because it was bigger and better child-proof than their apartment. Malik, now 4, was having a tantrum because I wouldn't let him eat cookies for dinner. Zara was crying because Amara had taken her toy. Amara was screaming because she needed a diaper change. Baby Jalen was fussing because he was tired but fighting his nap. I was in my kitchen, trying to prepare dinner while juggling a crying baby, when I felt a sharp pain in my chest. My left arm went numb. I couldn't catch my breath. I called 911, terrified I was having a heart attack. The paramedics arrived to find me collapsed on my kitchen floor, 4 small children crying around me. Thank God my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, heard the sirens and came over to help with the kids until Marcus could get there. At the hospital, the doctors determined I'd had a severe panic attack brought on by extreme stress and exhaustion. My blood pressure was dangerously high. They kept me overnight for observation and sent me home with strict instructions to eliminate stress from my life and consider therapy. That night in the hospital, alone with my thoughts and without the constant demands of 4 children, I finally admitted to myself what I'd been avoiding for years. I was drowning. I was sacrificing my health, my happiness, and my future for a situation that I hadn't created and couldn't control. When Marcus came to pick me up from the hospital, I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years, genuine fear and concern for me, not just worry about who would watch his children. "Ma, I'm so sorry," he said, tears in his eyes. "I didn't realize, I knew you were helping a lot, but I didn't know you were..." "Killing myself?" I finished. "Because that's what's happening, Marcus. I'm literally making myself sick trying to manage your family responsibilities." For the first time in 4 years, we had an honest conversation. I told him how overwhelmed I felt, how I'd lost myself in the role of unpaid nanny, how I was resentful and exhausted but afraid to say anything because I didn't want to seem selfish or uncaring. He listened, really listened, and then he promised things would change. They did. For about 2 weeks. Then Shayla called with another crisis, and Marcus asked if I could just help out this once until they got back on their feet. And like an idiot, I said yes. Within a month, we were back to the old pattern. That's when I decided I needed professional help. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Williams, who specializes in family dynamics and boundary setting. She helped me understand that I'd been enabling Marcus and Shayla's dysfunction, that my help was actually preventing them from learning to manage their own responsibilities. Every time you rescue them, you're sending the message that they don't need to figure it out themselves, she explained. You're not helping them become better parents. You're allowing them to remain children themselves. It was a hard truth to swallow. Dr. Williams taught me about boundaries, about the difference between helping and enabling, about the importance of self-care and personal responsibility. She helped me see that my own childhood, growing up with a mother who sacrificed everything for her family and expected the same from me, had shaped my inability to say no to unreasonable requests. I started setting small boundaries. I told Marcus I could only babysit 2 days a week. I insisted they start paying for their own diapers and formula instead of expecting me to provide everything. I stopped doing their laundry and cleaning their house. Each boundary I set resulted in drama. Shayla would cry and tell me I was abandoning her and the children. Marcus would look disappointed and stressed, making comments about how hard things were for them. They'd both remind me how much the children loved me, how I was the only stable presence in their lives, and I'd feel guilty and give in. This cycle continued for months until 3 weeks ago when Marcus called with news that shattered the fragile progress I'd been making. "Ma, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice strained. Shayla's pregnant again. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair, feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. Pregnant? I repeated. Again? Yeah, she just found out. We're kind of in shock. Marcus, that will be 5 children under 5 years old. 5 children. Do you understand what that means? I know it sounds like a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot. It is a lot. It's an impossible amount. You can barely manage the 4 you have now. Ma, I know you're upset, but we're going to need... No. The word came out of me with a force that surprised us both. No, Marcus, I can't do this again. There was silence on the other end of the line. Ma, what do you mean? I mean, I can't be the primary caregiver for another one of your children. I can't sacrifice my health and my life anymore. I won't do it. But Ma, you don't understand. Shayla's really struggling with this pregnancy. She's scared and overwhelmed, and then maybe she should have thought of that before having unprotected sex for the 5th time in 4 years, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Another silence. Ma, that's really harsh. You know what's harsh, Marcus? Watching your mother work herself into a panic attack because she's trying to single-handedly raise your children while you and your wife make decision after decision that creates more work for everyone else. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, but he didn't respond. I love those children, I continued, my voice softening slightly. I love them with all my heart, but I cannot be their primary caregiver anymore. I won't survive it, literally. The doctor told me my blood pressure could cause a stroke if I don't reduce my stress levels. So what are you saying? Marcus asked, his voice small. I'm saying you and Shayla need to figure out how to be parents to your children without relying on me to do the hard work. I'm saying this 5th baby cannot be my responsibility in any way. I'm saying I need to step back and let you both grow up and handle your own family. That conversation was 3 weeks ago, and it didn't go well. Marcus was hurt and angry. When he told Shayla about our conversation, she called me crying, accusing me of abandoning the family when they needed me most. Those babies don't understand why Grandma Dorothy doesn't want to see them anymore, she sobbed into the phone. That's not what this is about, I tried to explain. I'm not saying I don't want to see them. I'm saying I can't be responsible for raising them. But you're the only help we have. My own mother is in Alabama and can barely take care of herself. We don't have anyone else. Then you need to find other resources. There are programs, childcare options, family support services. You need to explore those instead of depending on me to be your full-time nanny. The guilt trips intensified over the following days. Marcus would bring the children by unannounced, hoping I'd melt when I saw their faces and agree to watch them just this once. Shayla sent me photos of the ultrasound from her first prenatal appointment with messages like, "Baby number 5 can't wait to meet Grandma Dorothy," but I held firm with Dr. Williams' support and encouragement. The real test came last week when Shayla called me at 6 in the morning, crying hysterically. "Dorothy, I need you to come over right now. I can't handle all of them this morning. They're all awake and cranky, and I feel like I'm going to have a breakdown. Marcus had to leave early for work, and I just can't do this alone." In the past, I would have been in my car within 10 minutes. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "Shayla, I understand you're having a hard morning, but I can't come over. You need to handle this." But I can't. I'm telling you, I can't handle 4 children by myself. Then you need to call someone else. Maybe a friend, or look into that Mother's Day Out program at the church I told you about, or contact the Family Services Office about respite care options. I don't have friends who can help with 4 kids, and those programs have waiting lists. Dorothy, please, just this once. I'm begging you. Every fiber of my being wanted to give in. These were my grandchildren. I could hear them crying in the background. But I also remembered the feeling of my chest tightening in the hospital, the realization that I was sacrificing my life for a situation that would never get better if I kept enabling it. I'm sorry, Shayla. I know this is hard, but you have to figure it out. That's what being a parent means." I hung up the phone and cried for an hour, but I didn't go over there. Later that day, Marcus called me, furious. "Ma, Shayla had to call in sick to work because she couldn't manage the kids alone. She's going to get in trouble with her supervisor. How could you just abandon her like that?" "I didn't abandon her, Marcus. I refused to enable her continued dependence on me." "It's the same thing." "No, it's not. Abandonment would be disappearing from their lives completely. Setting boundaries means I'm still here, but not as a full-time childcare solution." That conversation devolved into an argument where Marcus accused me of being selfish and heartless, and I accused him of being irresponsible and taking advantage of me. We both said things we probably shouldn't have, and we haven't spoken since. The silence from my son and daughter-in-law has been both painful and peaceful. Painful because I miss the children terribly, and I worry about how they're managing. Peaceful because for the first time in 4 years, I'm sleeping through the night. My blood pressure is coming down, and I'm starting to remember who I am outside of being Grandma Dorothy, the eternal babysitter. I've started going back to my book club. I've resumed my morning walks. I'm tending to my garden again and reading novels for pleasure. I've even started talking to my neighbor, Mr. Johnson, a widower who's been asking me to dinner for months. Last weekend, I went to the theater for the first time in years. I'm rediscovering pieces of myself I'd lost, but the guilt is overwhelming sometimes. I lie awake at night wondering if I'm being selfish, if those children are suffering because of my decision to step back. When I see mothers struggling with their children at the grocery store or the park, I feel a pang of recognition and wonder if I should have tried harder to help Shayla learn to cope, rather than just removing myself from the situation. Dr. Williams reminds me that I tried for 4 years to teach and support and assist, and that the only thing that changed was the number of children I was expected to manage. She points out that Shayla is a grown woman who needs to learn to parent her own children, and that my continued intervention was preventing that growth from happening. "You can't love someone into being responsible," she tells me. "You can't sacrifice yourself into fixing someone else's dysfunction." Yesterday, I got a call from my daughter, Kenya. "Mama, I heard about what's happening with Marcus and Shayla," she said. "I just want you to know I'm proud of you for setting boundaries." Are you? Because most days I feel like the worst mother and grandmother in the world. You're not. You know what you are? You're a woman who gave 4 years of her life to help her son's family, and when it became clear that your help was actually preventing them from learning to help themselves, you made the hard decision to step back. That takes courage. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like selfishness. Mama, let me ask you something. If you had continued on the path you were on, what would have happened to you? I thought about it honestly. I probably would have had a heart attack or stroke within the next year or 2. The stress was killing me. And then what would have happened to those grandchildren you love so much? They would have lost the person who cared most about their well-being. You wouldn't have been helping anyone by working yourself to death. She had a point, but it didn't make the guilt any easier to bear. This morning, I did something I've been putting off for weeks. I wrote a letter to Marcus and Shayla. Not an email, not a text, but an actual handwritten letter that I plan to mail today. In it, I tried to explain my position more clearly, without the emotion and defensiveness that had colored our recent conversations. I told them I love them and the children unconditionally, but that I can no longer be their primary childcare solution. I offered to help them research community resources, family support programs, and affordable childcare options. I suggested they consider family counseling to work through some of the dynamics that have led to their current situation. I also set clear boundaries for the future. I offered to babysit the children one Saturday afternoon per month, as a grandmother should, not as an unpaid nanny. I invited them to bring the children by for Sunday dinner twice a month, where we can maintain our family relationships without me taking on parenting responsibilities. I offered to provide emotional support and advice when asked, but made it clear that I would no longer be providing daily childcare, financial support beyond reasonable birthday and Christmas gifts, or crisis intervention services. I ended the letter by telling them that I believe in their ability to be good parents when they're forced to step up and take full responsibility for their choices. I told them I hope that baby number 5 will be born into a family that has learned to function independently, and that I look forward to being a grandmother to that child, but only a grandmother, not a third parent. I don't know how they'll respond to the letter. They might be angry, hurt, or continue to try to guilt me into resuming my old role. But I'm committed to holding these boundaries no matter how difficult it becomes. Because I've realized something important over these past few weeks of stepping back. I am not just Grandma Dorothy. I am Dorothy Washington, a woman with her own dreams, needs, and right to a peaceful life. I spent 32 years raising other people's children as a teacher, and another 20-something years raising my own children as a single mother. I've earned the right to say no to raising another generation, especially when that generation belongs to two capable adults who are choosing to avoid their responsibilities. The hardest part of this whole situation isn't the guilt or the family drama. It's the realization of how much of myself I lost in those 4 years. I became so consumed with being the solution to everyone else's problems that I forgot I was a person with problems, dreams, and needs of my own. I'm 57 years old. If I'm lucky, I have 20 or 30 good years left. I refuse to spend them changing diapers and mediating toddler tantrums, while the actual parents of those children remain perpetual adolescents who never learn to handle their own responsibilities. Does this make me selfish? Maybe. But I'm learning that some selfishness is necessary for survival. I'm learning that you can love people without sacrificing your entire existence for them. I'm learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's dysfunction, even when that refusal causes temporary pain. My friend Coretta stopped by yesterday afternoon and found me in my garden, planting bulbs for spring flowers. "Look at you," she said, smiling. "You look like yourself again." "I'm trying to remember who that is," I admitted. She's a strong, intelligent woman who raised 3 children on her own and deserves to enjoy her golden years, however she chooses. She's someone who loves her family but doesn't have to lose herself in service to them. As I write this, I'm sitting on my back porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun set over my garden. For the first time in 4 years, I don't have a mental list of children's needs running through my head. I don't have to worry about tomorrow's diaper count or whether there's enough formula in the cabinet. I don't have to plan my entire day around someone else's childcare crisis. It's quiet, peaceful, and yes, a little lonely, but it's my quiet, my peace, my choice. Tomorrow I'm going to mail that letter. Then I'm going to water my plants, finish the novel I'm reading, and maybe call Mr. Johnson about that dinner invitation. I'm going to live my life as a grandmother who loves her grandchildren deeply, but from a healthy distance, not as a substitute parent who has forgotten she deserves a life of her own. Marcus and Shayla have 5 months before baby number 5 arrives to figure out how to function as independent adults and parents. I hope they use that time wisely. I hope they find resources, develop support systems, and learn to handle their responsibilities without expecting someone else to do the hard work for them. And I hope that when I meet my 5th grandchild, it will be as a grandmother visiting a stable, functioning family, not as the primary caregiver arriving to rescue everyone from another crisis they created. I've spent 4 years putting everyone else's needs before my own. Now it's my turn to matter in my own life. The guilt may never fully go away, but I'm learning to live with it. Because the alternative, continuing to sacrifice my health, happiness, and future for a situation that would never improve, isn't really living at all. I am Dorothy Washington. I am a retired teacher, a loving mother, a devoted grandmother, and a woman who deserves peace and respect in her golden years. I am someone who has given enough done enough, and sacrificed enough. And for the first time in 4 years, that feels like exactly enough.